The ship descended through Earth's atmosphere with the grace of a falling leaf. Ambassador Velthara watched through the viewport as the blue planet grew larger. She had visited 47 worlds in her 3 centuries of service, but something about this one made her nervous. The humans were new. Too new. They had only just begun experimenting with quantum technology. Yet somehow their clumsy attempts had created ripples that reached across half the galaxy. The Galactic Concord had detected the disturbances and sent her to investigate. Now, standing in the assembly hall of the United Earth Government, Velthara faced a room full of curious human faces. They looked fragile, these beings. Soft skin, no natural armor, no claws or fangs to speak of. Yet their eyes held an intensity that made her uncomfortable. "People of Earth," she began, her translator converting her words into their language. "The Galactic Concord extends greetings to humanity. We come with an invitation to join an ancient tradition, one that has existed for over 50,000 years. She activated the holographic display. Images of magnificent beings floated in the air, representatives of the great civilizations that had come before. We call it the Grand Trials. Every 500 years, civilizations gathered to demonstrate their mastery over the fundamental forces of the universe. The winners received territory, technology, and a voice in galactic affairs. A human hand shot up. Velthara paused, surprised by the interruption. On most worlds, beings waited until she finished speaking. "Yes?" she said. "What are the rules?" the human asked. He was young, wearing what she had learned was called a military uniform. "The rules are extensive," Velthara replied. "The complete documentation spans approximately 10,000 pages. But the essence is simple. You will face challenges that test your civilization's ability to manipulate power in various forms. Gravitational, quantum, stellar, temporal, and others. But what exactly counts as winning?" another human asked. This one was older, a female with gray in her hair and the bearing of a scientist. "The species that completes each challenge most elegantly and efficiently," Velthara explained. "Style and grace matter as much as results. The trials are not merely about power, but about demonstrating worthy stewardship of that power." The humans began talking among themselves. Velthara heard fragments of their conversation. Words like parameters and optimization and edge cases. She did not understand why these concepts would be relevant to a sacred competition. 3 weeks later, Earth sent its delegation. Dr. Sarah Chun led the team, along with Commander Marcus Webb and a support crew of 20 specialists. When they arrived in Arbitrium, the neutral world where the trials took place, 12 other species had already set up their camps. The Zervani, masters of stellar manipulation, had constructed elegant towers that hummed with cosmic energy. The Cathedral Empire had built a fortress, their massive warriors practicing combat drills in perfect formation. The Ascending Confederation, Velthara's own people, meditated in crystalline chambers, preparing their minds for the challenges ahead. The humans built what looked like a command center. Screens covered every surface, showing data streams and calculations. The other species found this peculiar. Technology was permitted, but most civilizations relied on their innate abilities and centuries of training. On the first evening, the trial keepers called all participants to the central arena for the opening ceremony. These ancient beings, witnesses to countless competitions, floated above the assembled species on platforms of pure light. Their spokesperson, an entity known only as the First, addressed the crowd. "Welcome, participants, to the 500th Grand Trial. You have been chosen to represent your civilizations in this sacred competition. Remember that you carry not only your hopes, but the honor of your people. Conduct yourselves with dignity and respect for the traditions that bind us." The speech continued for an hour, covering the history of the trials and the importance of proper decorum. Most species listened with reverence. The humans appeared to be taking notes. After the ceremony, the participants mingled in the common area. The Cathedral Emperor, a being twice the height of any human and covered in natural armor plating, approached Commander Webb. His voice rumbled like thunder. "You are the humans," he stated. "I have reviewed your species' history. You have barely left your own solar system. You understand nothing of true power." Webb smiled, which confused the Emperor. Humans showed teeth when pleased. "How strange." "You might be right," Webb said. "But we're here to learn. And to compete, of course. Competition requires strength," the Emperor said. "What strength do your kind possess?" "Well," Webb replied, "we're pretty good at finding creative solutions to problems. Back home, we have these things called games. They teach you to think differently, to see patterns, to exploit opportunities that others miss." Exploit? The word came from Velthara, who had been listening nearby. "Commander, these are the grand trials, not some crude contest. This is about demonstrating mastery and worthiness." "Right," Webb nodded. "But there are rules, aren't there? Parameters we need to work within?" "Of course, but then it's a game," Webb said simply. "A complicated one, sure. High stakes, definitely. But still a game. And humans are really, really good at games." Velthara felt a chill run through her crystalline structure. She had studied human history during her research. She knew about their wars, their sports, their constant competition with each other and with themselves. They turned everything into contests, into puzzles to be solved. She had not considered what that might mean here. The next morning, the trial keepers distributed the official rulebook. Most species assigned small teams to study the document over the following weeks. The humans did something different. They scanned all 10,000 pages into their computers within the first hour. By evening, Dr. Chun's team had created what they called a flowchart of the entire rule system. They identified gaps, ambiguities, and what Webb kept calling exploitable mechanics. "This section here," one of the human technicians pointed at a screen. "It says we can't directly interfere with stellar processes during the stabilization challenge. But it doesn't say anything about indirect interference. And this part," another human added, "defines completion as ending the collapse event. Not specifically stabilizing it, just ending it." Dr. Chun smiled. "We need to think outside the box on this one." In the Cathedral camp, the Emperor's advisors reported the strange human behavior. "They treat the sacred texts like a technical manual," one complained. "They show no respect for tradition." The Emperor growled thoughtfully. "Perhaps they simply do not understand. They will learn humility when the challenges begin." But Velthara, watching the humans work through the night, their screens glowing in the darkness, was not so sure. She had seen that look before in the eyes of predators. It was the look of creatures who had identified prey. The difference was that the humans were not hunting other species. They were hunting the game itself. The first challenge began on the 7th day. The trial keepers transported all participants to an observation platform orbiting a dying star. The massive red giant pulsed irregularly, its outer layers beginning to collapse inward. Within 3 solar cycles, it would go supernova, destroying everything in the system, including 4 inhabited planets. "Your task," the first announced, "is to stabilize this star using your civilization's knowledge and technology. You will be judged on efficiency, elegance, and the preservation of life. You have 5 solar cycles to complete this challenge." The Zervani moved first. They were the favorites to win this challenge, having studied stellar mechanics for over 10,000 years. Their lead scientist, a being of pure energy named Lorvan, began weaving gravitational harmonics around the star. It was beautiful to watch, like a dance of invisible forces. The Cathedral took a different approach. They deployed massive gravity anchors, attempting to physically hold the star's mass in place through brute force. It was crude compared to the Zervani method, but effective in its own way. Other species employed their own techniques. The Ascending Confederation used quantum manipulation to adjust the star's fusion processes. The Hive Collective coordinated millions of small drones to create a stabilization net. Each method reflected the philosophy and strengths of its civilization. The humans did something unexpected. They started taking measurements. For the first 12 hours, they did nothing but scan the star, the surrounding space, and the 4 inhabited planets. Dr. Chun's team filled their computers with data about mass distribution, energy output, gravitational fields, and planetary orbits. "What are they doing?" the Cathedral Emperor asked Velthara. "The star collapses while they watch?" Velthara had no answer. The humans seemed unconcerned by the ticking clock. On the second day, the humans began construction. But they were not building stabilization equipment. Instead, they assembled what looked like a massive directional thruster on one side of the star. "They're building a Shkadov thruster," Lorvin observed with surprise. "But why?" "That technology is for moving stars, not stabilizing them." Dr. Chun presented their plan to the trial keepers on the third day. "We've analyzed the problem," she explained. "The star is collapsing because it's exhausted its hydrogen fuel. Traditional stabilization will only delay the inevitable by a few thousand years. Then this challenge will need to be repeated." "That is acceptable," the first replied. "The challenge is to prevent the immediate crisis." "Right," Chun nodded. "But the rules don't specifically say we need to stabilize the star. They say we need to end the collapse event and preserve the lives in this system." She activated a holographic display. "We're going to let the star collapse. But we'll control the collapse, turning it into a directed supernova. The energy will be channeled through our thruster system, which will push the entire inner system to a safer orbit around the younger, stable star we've identified 3 light-years away." Silence filled the chamber. Even the trial keepers, who had witnessed countless competitions, seemed stunned. "That is," the first began, then paused. "That is not how this challenge is traditionally completed." "Is it against the rules?" Commander Webb asked. The trial keepers conferred among themselves. After several minutes, the first spoke again. "No, it does not violate any written rule. However, the spirit of the challenge—" "With respect," Webb interrupted, "the rules don't mention spirit. They mention specific criteria. Will the collapse event end? Yes. Will lives be preserved? Yes. Will we do it within the time limit? Yes." The first light flickered. "You wish to move an entire solar system. It's the most efficient solution," Chan explained. "Stabilizing a dying star wastes energy. Moving the planets saves them permanently. We checked. There's nothing in the rules that says we can't." The trial keepers had no choice but to allow it. Over the next 2 days, the humans worked at a pace that shocked the other species. They coordinated the construction of additional thrusters, calculated trajectories with precision, and prepared the inhabited planets for the coming transition. They contacted the native populations and explained what was about to happen, providing them with shielding technology to protect against the radiation. On the 5th day, the humans triggered the controlled collapse. The star's death became a directed explosion, its energy focused through the thruster array. The 4 planets, still in formation, began accelerating toward their new home. The entire process took 47 hours from start to finish. The other species were still working on their traditional stabilization methods. When the humans declared the challenge complete, the star was gone, collapsed into a neutron core, but the planets were safe and on course to reach a stable system, where they could thrive for billions of years. The judging took 3 days. The trial keepers debated endlessly. No one had ever solved a challenge this way. Some argued it violated the spirit of the competition. Others pointed out that the humans had achieved every stated objective ahead of schedule and with permanent results. Finally, the first made the announcement. The humans have completed the first challenge. They receive full points and are awarded a creative solution bonus, an honor that has not been granted in 3,000 years. The reaction among the other species was mixed. The Zervani, who had been expected to win, protested that the humans had not truly engaged with the challenge as intended. The Cathedral seemed more thoughtful, recognizing tactical brilliance when they saw it. That evening, Webb found himself surrounded by human team members celebrating their victory. They had brought something called champagne from Earth, which they had somehow smuggled through customs. "We did it!" one technician shouted. "First challenge, first place." "Don't get cocky," Chun warned, though she was smiling. "We got lucky. They weren't expecting anyone to think outside the box. They'll be ready next time." "Let them be ready," Webb said. "We've been playing games our whole lives. Strategy games, puzzle games, resource management games. Every human here has spent thousands of hours learning to optimize, to find the path of least resistance, to exploit mechanics." He raised his glass. "The other species trained for centuries in their specific powers. But we trained in something more fundamental. We trained in how to win." Across the compound, Velthara met with representatives from the other species. The mood was tense. "They make a mockery of our traditions," the Zervani representative complained. "This is not a contest of cleverness, but of mastery." "They mastered the rules," Velthara pointed out. "That is its own form of power. They treat it like a game," the Cathedral Emperor rumbled. "Perhaps," Velthara said quietly, "that is exactly why they are dangerous. They see the trials not as a test of worthiness, but as a system to be exploited. And humans are very, very good at exploiting systems." The second challenge was announced the following day. Participants would need to navigate a dimensional maze that existed across 7 different planes of reality. Most species began studying the maze structure, planning careful routes through the complex geometry. The humans did something different. They started testing the walls. Within hours, they had discovered that the dimensional barriers, while solid in most places, had microscopic weak points where the reality layers were thin. By applying precisely calculated gravitational pulses, they could create temporary breaches. "It's called clipping," Webb explained to his confused team. "In video games back home, sometimes you can pass through walls if you hit them at the right angle with the right momentum. This is basically the same thing, just with dimensional physics instead of graphics rendering." Dr. Chun ran the calculations. "If we can breach here, and here, we can skip about 60% of the maze. Is that cheating?" One of the younger scientists asked. Webb grinned. "If it's not in the rules, it's not cheating. It's just good strategy." The trial keepers would learn this lesson the hard way. The Dimensional Maze Challenge began at dawn. 13 species entered the maze simultaneously, each from a different entry point. The structure shimmered with impossible geometry, corridors folding into themselves, stairs leading to places that should not exist. The ascending confederation moved with careful precision, their psychic abilities allowing them to sense the dimensional boundaries. The Cathedral used their physical might to brute force through obstacles. The Zervani navigated with mathematical elegance, calculating each turn with stellar precision. The humans went straight through a wall. The breach lasted only 3 seconds, but it was enough. The entire human team slipped through the dimensional barrier and emerged, 17 levels deeper into the maze than where they had started. Alarms sounded throughout the observation center. "What just happened?" The first demanded. "The humans have breached the maze structure," a trial keeper reported. They created a localized dimensional collapse using coordinated gravitational pulses. Is that permitted? The trial keeper checked the rules. The regulations state that participants must navigate from entrance to exit. They do not specify that participants must follow the provided pathways. The first light flickered with what might have been frustration. Add a clarification. Dimensional breaching violates the spirit of the challenge. But it was too late. The humans had already breached 2 more walls and were approaching the exit. They completed the maze in 6 hours and 14 minutes. The previous record, held by the Ascending Confederation, was 43 hours. When challenged by the trial keepers, Dr. Chun remained calm. We studied the rules carefully. There was no prohibition against creating our own paths. We simply found the most efficient route. You exploited a loophole, the first accused. We found an opportunity, Chun corrected. Isn't innovation part of what you're testing? The trial keepers had no choice but to award humanity first place again. But they spent the next 2 days updating the rule book, adding thousands of new clauses to prevent what they now called human-style rule exploitation. The third challenge involved diplomacy. 2 ancient artificial intelligences had been at war for centuries, locked in a conflict neither could win. Participants were tasked with negotiating peace between them. Previous competitions had seen this challenge take months to complete. Most species sent their best diplomats. The Cathedral offered to defeat both AIs in combat and force peace. The Zervani proposed an elegant mediation framework based on logical harmony. The Ascending Confederation attempted psychic communication to find common ground. The humans approached it differently. They spent the first day not talking to the AIs but analyzing their code structure. Both AIs are based on similar architecture, one of the human programmers explained. They share core memory protocols from when they were created by the same civilization. That's why they've been fighting for so long. They're too similar, each predicting the other's moves. So how do we stop them? Webb asked. We don't stop them, Dr. Chun said. We give them something they both trust more than each other. We create a neutral mediator, AI that shares their base architecture, but has no history with either side. It took the humans 18 hours to design and build the new AI. They called it Solomon, after an ancient Earth legend about wisdom. Solomon spoke both AIs' languages, understood their grievances, and proposed solutions neither had considered because they were too focused on defeating each other. Within 6 hours of Solomon's activation, both AIs agreed to a ceasefire. Within 12 hours, they had signed a permanent peace treaty. The humans completed the challenge in less than 2 days. The other species were stunned. The Cathedral Emperor approached Commander Webb during the evening meal. You humans do not play fairly, the Emperor said. Webb looked up from his food. We play by the rules. Every single time. You twist the rules, the Emperor insisted. You find edges and corners that should not exist. Those edges exist because someone wrote the rules that way, Webb replied. Look, Your Majesty, back on Earth we have millions of games. Some are simple, some are incredibly complex. But every game has mechanics, and every mechanic can be optimized. We've spent thousands of years learning how to find optimal strategies. This is not a game, the Emperor growled. Everything is a game, Webb said. War is a game with the highest stakes. Diplomacy is a game of information and trust. Even survival is a game of resource management. The only difference is how seriously you take the consequences. The Emperor stared at the small human. And you take this seriously? Absolutely, Webb said. We're playing to win, but we're also having fun doing it. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive. The fourth challenge was announced the next morning. All participants would be placed in an arena where technology would not function. A suppression field would disable all advanced equipment, reducing everyone to basic survival skills. The challenge would last 7 days. Those who built the most sophisticated survival infrastructure would win. The Cathedral were confident. Their natural strength and armor made them ideal for primitive conditions. The Zervani were concerned, being energy beings with little physical presence. The Ascending Confederation began preparing meditation techniques to endure the hardship. The humans brought backpacks full of what looked like camping equipment. When the challenge began, the suppression field activated. All advanced technology died instantly. Computers went dark, energy weapons stopped functioning. Even the environmental suits most species wore stopped working. The humans opened their backpacks and started pulling out knives, rope, flint, steel, and other primitive tools. Within the first hour, they had started a fire using the flint and steel. By the second hour, they had built a basic shelter using branches and cordage. Where did they learn this? Valthara asked, watching from the observation platform. Earth history records show that humans survived for hundreds of thousands of years using only primitive technology, a trial keeper explained. They were hunter-gatherers, living in harsh environments without any natural defenses. They had to make tools or die. But that was their ancient past, Valthara protested. Surely modern humans have forgotten such skills. Apparently not, the trial keeper said. By the end of the first day, the humans had a fortified camp with fire, shelter, water collection systems, and food storage. The Cathedral had shelter, but were struggling with fire. Most other species were simply enduring, waiting for the challenge to end. On the third day, the humans began experimenting with the arena materials. They discovered that certain rocks contained iron ore. Other stones could be used to create basic circuits. The suppression field blocked advanced technology, but it did not block fundamental physics. This is impossible, the first said on the 5th day, watching the humans work. They are building electrical systems using rocks and minerals. Dr. Chun had directed her team to create a basic dynamo using flowing water. Copper wire they had extracted from ore, and magnets they had made using lightning strikes on iron-rich stones. It was crude, but it worked. By the 7th day, the human camp had working lights powered by their makeshift generator. A water purification system using boiling and filtration, preserved food stores, and even basic communication devices made from copper wire and stone batteries. When the challenge ended and the participants returned to the main compound, the trial keepers were silent for a long time. Finally, the first spoke. Humanity, you have once again found a way to exceed expectations through unconventional means. However, we must express concern. You approach these sacred challenges not with reverence, but with what you call optimization. Is that wrong? Dr. Chun asked. It is unprecedented, the first replied. In 50,000 years of trials, no species has treated these tests as puzzles to be solved rather than trials to be endured. Webb stepped forward. Maybe that's the problem. You've been running the same competition the same way for so long that everyone knows the expected approaches. We're new. We don't know what we're supposed to do, so we just do what makes sense to us. And what makes sense to you is exploitation, the first said. We prefer to call it innovation, Chun said. But yes, essentially. Back on Earth, we have a saying, work smarter, not harder. We're not as strong as the Cathedral. We're not as ancient as the Zervani. We don't have natural mastery over cosmic forces like the Ascending Confederation. What we have is adaptability and creativity. And experience with games, Webb added. Lots and lots of experience with games. That night, representatives from all species gathered for an emergency meeting. The humans were not invited. They must be stopped, the Zervani representative insisted. They are making a mockery of our traditions. They are winning, the Cathedral Emperor said thoughtfully. That is not mockery. That is skill. But what kind of skill? Belthara asked. They do not demonstrate mastery of power. They demonstrate mastery of rules. Perhaps that is its own kind of power, the Emperor replied. On my world, we have a saying. The best warrior is not the one with the strongest weapon, but the one who knows when not to fight. These humans know something we have forgotten. What is that? Belthara asked. That every system, no matter how complex or sacred, is still just a system. And systems can be understood, analyzed, and beaten. The final challenge was announced the following morning, and it would test not just individual species, but their ability to work together. The final challenge was unlike anything that had come before. All participants gathered in the central arena as the first explained the scenario. Arbitrum itself is under threat, the ancient being announced. A reality collapse has been detected in the planetary core. This is not a natural phenomenon, but a test of your ability to cooperate under pressure. You must work together to prevent total dimensional collapse. You have 48 hours. The holographic display showed the spreading instability. Red zones expanded across the planet's interior, threatening to tear the world apart and everyone on it. This challenge is designed to be unwinnable, the first continued. It tests not your ability to succeed, but your grace in facing inevitable failure. How you conduct yourselves in the face of certain defeat reveals the true character of your civilizations. Most species immediately accepted this premise. The Zervani began coordinating their stellar manipulation techniques to slow the collapse. The Cathral organized their warriors to evacuate as many people as possible. The Ascending Confederation started meditation, rituals to maintain calm in the final hours. The humans asked for 30 minutes to think. Dr. Chun gathered her team in their command center. Screens flickered with data about the reality collapse, energy readings, dimensional stress points, and temporal fluctuations. Okay, Chun said. They told us it's unwinnable. What do we know about unwinnable scenarios? They're usually artificial, one programmer said. Like the Kobayashi Maru test. It's designed to fail. Exactly, Webb agreed. Which means someone designed this. And if someone designed it, there are parameters. Rules governing how the collapse works. The collapse started exactly when the challenge was announced, a technician observed. That's suspicious. Real dimensional collapses don't wait for dramatic timing. Chun pulled up the energy readings. Look at this. The collapse is following predictable patterns. It's expanding at a steady rate, hitting specific points in sequence. This isn't natural chaos. This is programmed. Can we hack it? Webb asked. Not directly, Chun said. But maybe we don't need to. If this is a programmed scenario using the trial system's own power sources, then it has to follow the same physical laws as everything else here. And physical laws can be exploited. They spent the next 20 minutes developing a plan that made Chun's hands shake as she wrote it down. It was insane. It required every species to contribute simultaneously in perfect coordination. One mistake and everyone would die, but it was the only way to win an unwinnable game. Chun presented the plan to the trial keepers and the other species. She used a projected display showing exactly what needed to happen and when. You want us to do what? The Zervani representative asked in disbelief. Amplify the collapse, Chun repeated. Not fight it. Feed it energy in a specific pattern. That will destroy us all, Belthar protested. Only if we do it wrong, Webb said. Look, the collapse is following program parameters. It's expanding at a set rate using available dimensional energy. If we flood it with energy in a specific sequence, we can overload the parameters. Force a system crash, basically. You want to break reality? The Cathral Emperor asked. We want to break the program controlling this artificial reality collapse, Chun corrected. There's a difference. She walked them through the plan step by step. The Zervanae would channel stellar energy at precise coordinates. The Cathedral would use their gravity anchors to create stress points. The Ascending Confederation would manipulate quantum states. The humans would coordinate timing and manage the energy flow using their makeshift computational systems. Every species had to trust the plan completely. There was no room for error. "This is madness," Lorvin said. But the Zervani scientist studied the calculations carefully. "However, the mathematics are sound. If we execute perfectly, it should work." "Should?" Valthara said weakly. "In our experience," Webb said, "should is good enough when it's your only option." The Cathedral Emperor stood. "My warriors do not flee from challenges, even suicidal ones proposed by small humans. If there is a chance to win, we will take it." One by one, the other species agreed. Some because they believed in the plan. Others because they had seen humans do impossible things already. And some simply because dying while trying was better than waiting for death. They had 17 hours, until the collapse reached critical mass. The coordination required was staggering. Species that had been rivals for millennia had to work as a single organism. Trusting each other completely, the humans managed the communication network they had built. Keeping all teams synchronized, Dr. Chun stood at the center, watching hundreds of data streams simultaneously. "Zervani team, increase power by 15%, she called out. "Cathedral Anchor 3, adjust position by 0.02 degrees. Ascending Confederation, prepare quantum pulse in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 now." The reality collapse grew larger, fed by their combined efforts. To outside observers, it looked like mass suicide. The red zones expanded faster, consuming more of the planet's interior, but the humans watched different numbers. System stress indicators, energy overflow warnings, parameter exceeding tolerance levels. "It's working," a technician whispered. "The program is destabilizing." With 3 hours remaining, the collapse suddenly changed. Instead of expanding smoothly, it began flickering. The program pattern broke down. The artificial nature of the scenario became obvious to everyone watching. "Push harder," Chun ordered. "We're almost there." The combined species poured everything they had into the collapse. Stellar energy, gravitational force, quantum manipulation, and human ingenuity merged into a coordinated assault on the very structure of the challenge itself. The collapse shattered. The red zones didn't just stop expanding. They inverted, transforming into stable dimensional anchors. The energy that had been programmed to destroy Arbitrum was rewritten, becoming a permanent stabilization. Metrics that would protect the planet for millennia. Silence filled the observation chamber. Even the trial keepers seemed frozen in shock. The first finally spoke. "In 50,000 years, no one has ever done that. No one has ever even tried. Because everyone accepted that it was unwinnable," Webb said. "But humans don't accept that. We've been told things were impossible our entire history, and we kept trying anyway. Sometimes we failed, but sometimes we succeeded. And the only way to know which is to try." The trial keepers conferred for hours. When they returned, the first addressed all assembled species. "Humanity, you have won the grand trials. However, you have also fundamentally changed them. You approach sacred tests as systems to be analyzed. You found exploits where we saw only established paths. You treated power as a game to be mastered rather than a burden to bear. Is that wrong?" Chun asked quietly. "No," the first admitted. "It is revolutionary. 50,000 years of tradition blinded us to new possibilities. You have reminded the galaxy that innovation matters more than tradition, and that sometimes the best solution is the one no one expects." The first paused, light pulsing thoughtfully. We offer humanity a seat on the Galactic Concord's High Council. However, we also announce sweeping reforms to the trial system. 40,000 new rules will be implemented to prevent future exploitation of the kind humanity demonstrated. Webb grinned. We'll read every one of them. That is what concerns us, the first said. The closing ceremony was unlike any in trial history. Humans stood alongside the Cathral, the Zervani, and all the other species, having earned not just victory, but genuine respect. The Cathral Emperor approached Commander Webb one final time. "You humans are terrifying," he said. "Not because you are strong, but because you see everything as a game to be won. Even when the stakes are life and death." "Especially when the stakes are life and death," Webb corrected. "That's when games matter most. When we play seriously. We analyze, we optimize, we find every advantage we can. Because the difference between winning and losing is the difference between survival and extinction." The Emperor considered this. "My people would like to form an alliance with yours. We have strength, but you have something we lack. You have the ability to see systems clearly, without the burden of tradition or expectation." "We'd be honored," Webb said. "But I should warn you about something." "What is that?" "Back on Earth, we have a saying among gamers. Never trust the players who read all the patch notes. They're the ones who break your game wide open." Webb smiled. "We've been reading yours." As humanity's delegation prepared to return to Earth, Velthara approached Dr. Chun privately. "What you did here will change the galaxy," the ambassador said. "Other civilizations will study your methods. They will learn to think as you think." "Good," Chun said. "The galaxy needs new ideas. You've been doing things the same way for 50,000 years. That's a long time to go without innovation. But what happens when everyone learns to exploit systems as you do?" Velthara asked. "What happens when power truly becomes a game for all species?" Chun looked out at the stars. "Then the game gets more interesting. And humans have never backed down from an interesting game." The human ships departed Arbitrum, carrying news of their victory back to Earth. Behind them, the galaxy began to change. Species that had relied on tradition started questioning old methods. The Trial Keepers rewrote their rules. Civilizations began studying human concepts of optimization, strategy, and game theory. The humans had won the grand trials. But more importantly, they had introduced a new way of thinking to a galaxy that had forgotten how to innovate. And as Commander Webb had promised, when humans played, they played to win. The galaxy would never be the same.